Most people wait for a breaking point before they change their lives. They wait until they are tired enough, hurt enough, or desperate enough to finally say, something has to change. But what if you didn't have to be broken to rebuild? What if the greatest transformation of your life didn't come from a crisis, but from a conscious decision made in a quiet moment of truth? Right now, there is a version of you that is stronger, sharper, more disciplined, and more courageous than the one standing here today. That version isn't created by luck, talent, or perfect circumstances. It is created by choice, small choices, daily choices, decisions made when no one is watching and when excuses feel comfortable. We spend so much of our lives reacting to what happens to us, but real power begins when we decide to respond with purpose. Not tomorrow, not someday, now. Because the truth is simple, you cannot always control what happens to you, but you can control who you become because of it. And that decision is where everything begins. Personal responsibility is the foundation of real change because it places the power of transformation directly into your own hands instead of leaving it scattered across external circumstances, people, or luck. When you accept responsibility for your life, you stop living as a passenger and begin living as a driver. This shift alone changes everything. You no longer wait for permission, conditions, or perfect timing. You understand that your thoughts, decisions, habits, and actions are shaping your outcomes every single day, whether you are aware of them or not. Many people remain trapped in cycles of frustration because they believe their problems are caused entirely by the world around them. They blame the economy, their family, their past, or their environment. While these factors can influence life, they do not have to control it. Responsibility is not about pretending hardships do not exist or that pain is imaginary. It is about recognizing that even within limitations, you still have choices. You can choose your attitude, your response, your effort, and your direction. Real change begins the moment you stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what can I do about this? Taking responsibility requires honesty. It demands that you look at your own behaviors and admit where you have been inconsistent, careless, fearful, or undisciplined. This is uncomfortable because the ego prefers to protect itself through excuses. But growth does not happen through protection. It happens through confrontation. When you tell yourself the truth about your habits, your mindset, and your standards, you give yourself the raw material needed to rebuild something better. There is a deep psychological power in ownership. When you own your results, you gain control over your future. If your health is poor and you accept that your daily choices contributed to it, you can begin to make better ones. If your financial situation is unstable and you acknowledge your spending patterns, you can learn discipline and strategy. If your relationships are broken and you recognize your communication mistakes, you can develop emotional intelligence. Responsibility transforms problems into projects and obstacles into opportunities for growth. However, personal responsibility is not self-hatred. It is not about beating yourself up over past mistakes. It is about empowerment. It says, I may not have caused everything that happened to me, but I am responsible for what happens next. This mindset protects you from helplessness. You stop drifting and start directing your life. You no longer see yourself as a product of circumstances, but as a product of decisions. Most successful people share one quiet habit. They take full ownership of their lives. They do not waste energy complaining. They invest energy in improving. They understand that discipline is more reliable than motivation and that consistency always beats intensity in the long run. Responsibility creates discipline and discipline creates progress. When you live with responsibility, you also become more dependable. People begin to trust you because your word has weight. You do not look for shortcuts or excuses. You do not shift blame. This builds self-respect, which is far more valuable than external approval. Confidence does not come from applause. It comes from keeping promises to yourself. In life, you cannot control everything, but you can control what you do next. Responsibility teaches you that your future is built from daily choices, not dramatic moments. It shows you that you are not powerless, you are powerful. But only when you are willing to accept full ownership of your actions, your mindset, and your direction. Growth begins when discomfort is accepted, not avoided. Because comfort often traps people in invisible limits, while discomfort forces expansion. Most people instinctively move toward what feels easy, safe, and familiar. This natural tendency protects them from pain in the short term, but it quietly steals their potential in the long term. When you choose comfort constantly, you choose stagnation, even if it feels peaceful on the surface. Real growth lies just beyond the edges of what feels familiar. Discomfort is often misunderstood as something negative, but in truth it is a signal of development. When muscles experience resistance, they don't shrink, they strengthen. The same principle applies to the mind, emotions, and character. Every time you push yourself to learn something difficult, face a fear, or step into unfamiliar territory, you are stretching your capacity. Without that stretch, you remain the same person you were yesterday. Change is not found in ease, it is forged in challenge. Avoiding discomfort creates a dangerous illusion of safety. People stay in unfulfilling jobs, unhealthy relationships, and self-destructive routines not because they are happy, but because they are familiar. The known pain feels safer than the unknown growth. This is one of the greatest psychological traps humans face. Yet the moment someone chooses to embrace discomfort, even in small ways, a powerful shift occurs. They stop being controlled by fear and start being guided by purpose. Learning to accept discomfort begins with mindset. Instead of treating discomfort as a warning sign, you begin to see it as a training ground. You understand that the awkwardness of beginner stages, the frustration of failure, and the tension of risk are all essential parts of becoming stronger. This shift doesn't remove fear, but it reduces its authority. You stop asking, "How can I avoid pain?" and start asking, "What is this discomfort trying to teach me?" Discomfort also builds resilience. Each time you willingly face challenge, you develop a thicker emotional skin. Rejection becomes less crushing. Failure becomes less final. Criticism becomes feedback instead of a verdict. You discover that you are capable of enduring far more than you originally believed. This realization is not theoretical. It is earned through experience. Comfort never reveals your strength, but struggle always does. Another powerful aspect of embracing discomfort is that it sharpens self-discipline. Motivation is unpredictable, but your willingness to act despite feeling uncomfortable creates reliability within yourself. You begin to trust yourself because you know you will act even when conditions are not perfect. This inner trust becomes a foundation for confidence. You no longer need to feel ready. You simply move forward with courage. Discomfort also exposes hidden limitations. When you feel uneasy, insecure, or challenged, you are often standing at the edge of a belief that needs to be broken. Maybe you believe you are not smart enough, not strong enough, or not capable enough. When you push through that discomfort, you prove to yourself that those beliefs were never facts, only habits of thought. Growth is not just about gaining skills, it is about shedding false identities. Many people wait for discomfort to disappear before taking action, but experienced individuals know the truth: action comes first, comfort follows. Confidence is not a prerequisite for action, it is a byproduct of it. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is movement in the presence of fear. Discomfort becomes a companion rather than an enemy. The most meaningful progress in life is rarely glamorous. It happens in moments of quiet struggle, in disciplined routines, in brave conversations, and in lonely commitments to self-improvement. Each uncomfortable step taken willingly becomes a brick in the foundation of a stronger life. Through repeated exposure to challenge, you evolve into someone who is not only skilled but also mentally unbreakable. Habits shape identity more than intentions do, because what you repeatedly do becomes who you eventually believe yourself to be. Many people live with strong intentions. They intend to be disciplined, confident, healthy, productive, and focused. But good intentions alone are invisible in real life. They do not change outcomes unless they are backed by consistent action. Your daily habits are the small, often unnoticed behaviors that quietly write the story of your character over time. Identity is not formed in dramatic moments, but in ordinary routines. When you wake up each day and choose to hit snooze instead of getting up with purpose, you reinforce the identity of someone who avoids effort. When you choose to train, read, practice, or work on your goals even when you do not feel like it, you reinforce the identity of someone who is disciplined. Over time, these small signals to your brain accumulate and turn into beliefs. You don't just act disciplined. You begin to see yourself as a disciplined person. Intentions live in the future. Habits live in the present. This is why habits are more powerful. You can intend to change your life for years, but if your habits remain the same, your life will remain the same. The brain learns through repetition, not wishful thinking. It recognizes patterns, and once a behavior becomes habitual, it becomes automatic. Your identity is built on these automatic behaviors, not on what you hope to do someday. Habits also reduce the need for constant motivation. Motivation is emotional and unstable. It rises and falls based on mood, environment, energy, and external events. Habits, on the other hand, function even when motivation is low. You brush your teeth daily not because you feel inspired, but because the habit exists. In the same way, Productive habits remove the emotional debate from your actions. You don't wake up and decide whether to be disciplined. You simply act because it has become your normal. The danger of negative habits is subtle but powerful. A poor habit doesn't destroy your life overnight. It erodes it slowly. Unhealthy eating, procrastination, excessive screen time, avoidance of responsibility, and negative self-talk build a weak identity over time. You start to see yourself as someone who is always behind, always tired, always overwhelmed. This identity wasn't created by one big failure. It was written by hundreds of small, repeated choices. Positive habits work in the same gradual but powerful way. Reading 10 pages a day builds a sharp mind. Training consistently builds a strong body and disciplined spirit. Scheduling tasks and honoring your schedule builds self-respect. Speaking kindly to yourself builds confidence and emotional stability. These habits don't feel dramatic in the moment, but they build a powerful identity in the long run. You wake up one day and realize you have become someone you used to admire. Another reason habits shape identity is that they influence your environment and relationships. When you live with strong habits, people perceive you differently. They trust your word more. They depend on you more. You carry yourself differently. This external reinforcement strengthens your internal self-image. You don't just tell yourself you are reliable, others treat you as reliable, and this confirms your identity even further. Breaking habits is difficult because it feels like breaking a part of yourself. This is why many people resist change. When you try to change a habit, your brain doesn't just fight the behavior, it fights the threat to your self-image. If you have lived as someone who procrastinates for years, becoming consistent feels unnatural at first. But with repetition, the new habit rewires the identity. You slowly begin to see yourself as someone who follows through. The most powerful way to change your life is not to focus on dramatic goals, but to focus on daily habits. Goals can be achieved and then forgotten. Identity lasts. When your habits align with the person you want to become, change becomes natural. You no longer force yourself to act differently. You act differently because you have become different. Pain can be transformed into purpose because suffering, when understood and processed correctly, becomes a powerful source of direction, strength, and meaning. Most people try to escape pain as quickly as possible. They distract themselves, numb themselves, or bury their experiences deep inside. While this may provide temporary relief, it also robs them of one of life's most powerful tools, the wisdom that comes from surviving difficulty. Pain is not only something that hurts, it is something that teaches. When a person experiences loss, failure, betrayal, rejection, or disappointment, it creates questions in the mind. Why did this happen? What did it cost me? What did it show me? These questions, if faced honestly, push a person toward growth. Pain forces awareness. It exposes weaknesses, false expectations, and fragile foundations. In that exposure lies the seed of purpose. Once you understand your wounds, you begin to understand your strengths. Pain changes perspective. A person who has struggled deeply often develops compassion that cannot be faked. They begin to see life differently, not as a smooth path, but as a journey of endurance and learning. This shift in perspective becomes the foundation for purpose because purpose is often born from understanding what matters most. People who have felt loneliness deeply often become leaders in community and connection. People who have experienced poverty often develop a drive to build security, not just for themselves, but for others. Pain does not vanish, but it evolves into direction. Transformation happens when pain is accepted instead of resisted. Acceptance does not mean agreement or approval. It means recognizing that the past cannot be changed, but the meaning of the past can. When you stop asking why something happened and start asking what it can make of you, pain becomes fuel instead of a burden. The energy that once felt like weight becomes propulsion. The hurt becomes a reason to rise rather than a reason to remain broken. There is also discipline born from pain. Suffering teaches endurance. It teaches patience. It teaches humility. These are qualities that purposeful people require. It is difficult to build meaningful goals without the emotional strength that pain produces. When you have faced hardship, small challenges no longer intimidate you. You develop a deeper hunger for growth because you understand how fragile life can be and how valuable time truly is. Pain becomes purpose when it is connected to service. When a person realizes that their struggle was not just about themselves, a shift happens. They start to help others who are going through similar battles. A person who overcame addiction may guide others toward recovery. A person who survived emotional trauma may teach others how to rebuild their self-worth. A person who faced failure may mentor others on resilience. In that moment, pain stops being a personal prison and becomes a platform for impact. This transformation does not happen overnight. It is not magical or easy. It happens slowly through reflection, honest thinking, and courageous action. You begin by telling yourself the truth about your experience. You allow yourself to feel it instead of running from it. And over time, you notice a shift. You are no longer defined by what hurt you. You are defined by what you learned from it. The most powerful people are not those who had easy lives. They are those who refused to let pain ruin them. They used it as material for growth, character, and contribution. Pain becomes purpose when it moves from being a question of, why did this happen to me, to becoming a statement of, this happened to shape me. Discipline creates freedom over time because structure, consistency, and self-control gradually remove chaos and replace it with stability, clarity, and choice. At first, discipline feels like restriction. It feels like saying no to temptation, comfort, and instant pleasure. Most people misunderstand it as punishment. In reality, discipline is not about limiting your life. It is about expanding your options. It gives you control over your time, energy, and direction. Without discipline, life becomes reactive. You respond to emotions, circumstances, and impulses rather than operating from intention. This creates a sense of being trapped, even when no one is physically restraining you. Lack of discipline leads to financial stress, poor health, broken routines, and missed opportunities. Over time, these consequences shrink your freedom. You are forced to live with the results of unmanaged habits. Paradoxically, the life with the fewest rules often feels the most suffocating. Discipline, on the other hand, builds invisible systems that support freedom. When you manage your time wisely, you create space. When you manage your money with intention, you reduce stress. When you take care of your health consistently, you gain energy and mobility. These are forms of freedom that cannot be achieved through shortcuts. They are earned through repeated, disciplined effort. The structure you build today becomes the liberty you enjoy tomorrow. At its core, discipline is about delayed gratification. It teaches you to choose long-term reward over short-term comfort. You skip the immediate pleasure of distraction so you can earn the deeper satisfaction of progress. This is not about denying joy. It is about redefining it. The joy of discipline is subtle at first, but it becomes profound over time. It shows up as confidence, self-respect, and peace of mind. One of the most powerful outcomes of discipline is trust in yourself. When you keep promises to yourself consistently, your self-belief strengthens. You stop doubting your ability to follow through. You stop negotiating with your weaknesses. This inner trust becomes a form of freedom that no external condition can provide. You are no longer controlled by mood, fear, or pressure. You become stable from within. Discipline also protects your future self. Every disciplined choice you make is a gift to the person you are becoming. Saving money protects you from future panic. Studying protects you from future ignorance. Exercising protects you from future physical limitations. Planning protects you from future chaos. In this way, discipline is an act of self-respect across time. It connects who you are now with who you will be later in a powerful, intentional way. People often think freedom means no rules, no schedules, and no restraints. But complete absence of structure leads to confusion and instability. True freedom does not come from randomness. It comes from mastery. A musician practices scales not to feel trapped, but to be free on stage. An athlete trains relentlessly not to feel restricted, but to perform without limitation. In the same way, personal discipline gives you mastery over yourself, which is the highest form of freedom. Discipline also builds resilience. When you train yourself to act regardless of feeling, you become mentally tough. You stop depending on perfect moods or ideal situations. You learn how to show up when it's uncomfortable, boring, or difficult. This mental strength creates freedom from emotional instability. You are not constantly at the mercy of how you feel in the moment. Over time, disciplined actions compound. Small decisions made daily create extraordinary results. What felt restrictive in the beginning becomes natural. You no longer feel forced to be consistent because consistency becomes part of who you are. And with that identity comes a quiet but powerful freedom that most people never experience. Daily self-investment compounds into long-term success because consistent effort, though small in the moment, builds powerful momentum over time. Most people underestimate what can be achieved through steady, repeated action because they are focused on dramatic results. They want instant transformation, quick wins, and visible change. But real success is rarely the result of a single breakthrough. It is the outcome of quiet, disciplined deposits made into your personal growth every single day. Self-investment includes the time you give to learning, the care you give to your health, the attention you give to your mindset, and the discipline you apply to your habits. These actions may seem insignificant when done one at a time. Reading a few pages feels small. Exercising for 20 minutes feels ordinary. Practicing a skill for a short period seems unremarkable. But the power lies in repetition. The human mind and body adapt to what they experience consistently. Over time, these small efforts build skill, resilience, knowledge, and confidence. Compounding is a principle that applies not only to money, but to effort. Just like financial interest grows faster when left untouched and added to consistently, personal growth accelerates when practiced without interruption. One missed day may feel harmless, but repeated neglect slows momentum. One disciplined choice builds momentum, and the next choice becomes easier. Success accelerates not because effort becomes unnecessary, but because consistency strengthens your foundation. Daily self-investment also shapes how you think about yourself. When you show up for yourself consistently, you build internal credibility. You begin to trust your own word. That trust changes the way you approach challenges. You stop doubting whether you can handle difficulty because you have proven, through repeated action, that you are reliable. This quiet confidence is not loud or flashy, but it is unshakable. You stop looking for motivation because discipline has become part of your identity. Another important aspect of daily investment is the protection it gives against regression. Without maintenance, even the best achievements decay, skills fade, health weakens, relationships suffer. Daily effort acts like upkeep for your mind, body, and character. It prevents small problems from growing into large failures. It keeps you aligned with your standards and your vision even when external conditions are unstable. People often believe that long-term success comes from sudden inspiration or rare opportunities. In reality, those opportunities usually arrive only after years of preparation. Daily self-investment prepares you for moments that others are not ready for. When the opportunity appears, you are not scrambling, you are prepared. Your knowledge is solid. Your discipline is practiced. Your mindset is stable. What looks like luck to others is really preparation meeting opportunity. Self-investment also multiplies your future choices. The more you invest in your skills, health, and mindset, the more options become available to you. Education gives you career flexibility. Financial discipline gives you lifestyle freedom. Physical health gives you mobility and energy. Emotional growth gives you relationship strength. Each day of effort widens the number of doors you can walk through later in life. Consistency is what transforms effort into identity. You don't become successful by a single great action. You become successful by maintaining standards on ordinary days. Showing up when you are tired builds character. Staying disciplined when no one is watching builds integrity. Learning when it feels slow builds intelligence. These qualities cannot be rushed, but once built, they cannot be easily taken away. Daily self-investment requires patience. The results are not always visible immediately, and that is where most people quit. They stop just before the breakthrough that consistency was about to create. Those who succeed long-term are not always the most talented, they are the most persistent. They understand that no effort is wasted when it is repeated with purpose. Rebuilding yourself is not about becoming someone else. It is about returning to who you were always meant to be, stronger in mind, steadier in purpose, and clearer in direction. It is a lifelong commitment to growth, not a single moment of motivation. Every challenge you face is not meant to break you, but to build you. Every setback is not a stop sign. It is a setup for a stronger comeback. When you take responsibility, embrace discomfort, build powerful habits, turn pain into purpose, practice discipline, and invest in yourself daily, you don't just change your life, you redefine your future. Remember this, you are not behind, you are not lost, you are not finished. You are in the process of becoming, and that process is powerful.